Hello. So today I want to talk about human energy, power, or vibes. My last talk was on God's power, and I want to try and make a distinction between the two. That's not the point of this talk is to illustrate how to identify your power and how to build from what you find. I'm going to use two primary examples in this talk. I'm going to use sex and I'm going to use crying. But first, why am I doing this talk? I'm someone I have my day job. I am perfectly capable of sustaining myself indefinitely. As far as our society is concerned, I have a trade. I can find work. Well, we may be going into a recession, so that may get sticky. But then I have my side work, which is this. My side work is, first and foremost, the work of it is to define consciousness. And once defined, help illustrate what that definition means for us. How it can be useful to allow us to live better, more satisfied, and productive lives. Alongside that, my sort of fun side work is my concepts of how to terraform this planet. Now, the fun side work on how to terraform this planet, surprisingly, is the easy part. We have everything we need to build a society out of the one we have now that is far better for us, that allows us to strengthen our own individual minds, our own individual talents. We do that now. But we do it in an environment of fear and somewhat desperation because we need to survive. And to survive, it's not so much the survival, it's that some people are really good at the surviving and get to the thriving. But to get to that in our society, by and large, you need to do that by making it harder for other people to thrive. The point of my work is to allow you to build yourself up so that, in my selfish way, I want to build you up so that the work I dream about, the terraforming of this planet, can be done. Because it can't be done with a lot of the mindset that we find today. So, I want to start this talk by giving you something that you're not going to want to have, and that is homework. I want you to think, as I do this talk, I want you to start thinking of your energy, your power, your vibrations as a muscle, not as an expenditure. When we go through our lives, we do the tasks we have to do to try and build up enough resources to do the tasks or to do the things that we want to do. And as we do these things, most of us, by and large, see the effort we put in as an expenditure. Something that I need to feed myself in order to build back up and to repeat it again. Something I need to sleep for to build myself back up and then repeat it again. I'll talk at another time about the power we have in our sleep, the recuperative power and the power to build ourselves while we sleep. But for now, I want you to start thinking of the energy you use, whether that be to help a friend emotionally, to help a friend move, to do your day job, to help clients if you're in a healthcare environment at work. I want you to start thinking of your power as a muscle and not as an expenditure. People who do a lot of work in fitness will understand this, obviously, because we're talking about a muscle. If you're somebody that understands the capacity of building muscle and that the pain and discomfort we feel is something that is helping us grow and become stronger, that is the mindset I want you to keep in mind while we do this work. Remember that the definition of consciousness is an organic process, mimetically driven or fueled, leading to mind. Mind is that state of consciousness that exists for you right now, right here. So, if you are somebody who wants to do this work, you need to be aware of the things that you are repeating. If you are repeating things that get you nowhere, all you are doing is expending energy and going back to refuel and doing it again. Refuel, do it again. Refuel, do it again. That is your cycle. That is what you are repeating in your mind. As we do that and only that, we make very little, if no progress, and often we regress. Find ourselves in depressed states, on medications, eating the wrong foods, not sleeping properly. I want you to understand that you are building a muscle, not spending an expenditure. You are trying to focus on and repeat things in your mind that lead to your growth, to deeper understanding, to stronger muscles. The world I want to build isn't something I can build. In fact, there is every possibility that I will talk to this microphone until the day I die, and I will never even be part of that work. The goal needs to be for me to instill in you the capability of doing it so that it can spread. The way consciousness works is by repeating these mimetic I'm not made for the talking part. I'm made for the thinking part. But if I was to ever enact my plan to terraform this planet, I cannot do it alone, and I wouldn't want to do it alone. To do it alone means I need to be some kind of dictator. Do it alone means I need to have power. To have power or to seek power means I have to sacrifice my honesty, my integrity. I have to do things for the power that are not for my growth. They are not, as an example, for your growth. We already have plenty of examples in this world of things that are done for power. That's been built up in our consciousness plenty. We don't need more of that. What we need is the growth of others, the building of a mental network that is growing towards a purpose. Right now we have that, but that purpose is survival. That is not to thrive, it is to survive. If the future that I want to build grows anything, it grows the capacity for people to find themselves in situations where the growth of mind is a focus, not the survival so that maybe I get a minute to think and grow about myself, or I'm only growing about myself while I'm going about the act of survival. There needs to be, and we have plenty of data on this, we have plenty of technology, we have more than enough land to do it on, there's plenty of surface area, plenty of useful surface area, plenty of surface area that is not currently useful that can be made useful, and in fact that task could be used as a unifying principle for the mind I want to grow. Collective mind, not my mind, our minds. So that is the homework while you're doing this work, while you're listening to this talk, when you're thinking about it later on, reflecting on it. That is what I want you to think about. I want you to think about your power as a muscle, not as an expenditure, not something you sacrifice for the benefit of others or the benefit of yourself, something you are developing, something that can get stronger and more powerful. The next thing I want you to keep in mind as you're doing this work is that the greatest strength to human possibility or power is the diversity of mind. See, we live in a culture that's been built for industrialization. We have things like IQ tests that are built to identify useful things in an industrialized civilization. That is now shifting towards an informational system. So now we look for qualities or diversity of mind that fits with that productivity. What I want you to understand is that by and large, most people aren't going to fit into the things that this society is looking for. If we're going to build a society that allows us to foster and grow mind, we have to recognize its diversity. For the most part, most people, when they live this life, will not ever discover what power they have. They won't discover that thing that makes them unique, that makes them beneficial for the rest of us, that gives them the self-confidence to go forward and continue to build, because we don't value the diversity. We appreciate art, we appreciate thinking, we appreciate literature, but we can appreciate it and not value it at the same time. There's no way for them to gain, if they discover their power, there's no way for them to use that power to grow society because of how we value what exists. So keep in mind while you're doing this work that you may very well discover something. You may discover where you are particularly powerful, and that power may be of very little use to anybody around you or anybody you know or anybody you are likely to meet. That's all right. The step of discovery is far more important than the step of discovering how it's used. That being said, Stephen King wrote something about the desires of talent itself, that once talent exists, its only desire is to be utilized. That talent calls to be used. So what good does it do me to show you how to find and identify your power, to build it, to understand it, to integrate it into your consciousness going forward, if that power you discover is useless? This society just does not treasure it, doesn't want to foster it, doesn't even really want to think about it. That would be the point of building this new world. Because, as an example, I suspect that since we already have discovered 2 replicators on our planet, that there is a third that has to do with energy generation. That third replicator would probably be much easier to discover and utilize if we had gone down a different technological and mimetic path to get where we are now. If we had gone a green energy way, I think we probably would have discovered that replicator. Instead, we've gone a consumption way where we use what we find easily and we use it in mass because there's so much of it that we've sort of used the biggest cheat in our entire history by using fossil fuels. It was deadly and difficult to extract them sometimes, but on the whole, it was pretty easy. It was easy to exploit. Your power may not be such that it is easy to utilize or exploit. And I suspect that if we had gone a different way, the less easy path, the less productive or profitable path, we probably would have found that third replicator already. And by doing this work, we may indeed find it. Another thing I want you to recognize as you're doing this work is that not all human power is found or fostered within ourselves. If I discover my power, I still gain power from prayer, from meditation, from inspiration by other people, from the inspiration of fictional works, from the inspiration of non-fictional works, from people who have done research on topics that I care about. Not all power, once you discover yours, is your own. Very much of it, especially when you talk about the subject of empathy, doesn't even belong to us. It is something we were given, something that was intentionally, by design, put into us to try and get us over the struggle, the most important struggle, as seen from outside of our species. If you are having a hard time discovering your power, I did a talk labeled Meditation. That talk was by design intended to show you methodologies to uncover your power and then to grow it from wherever you find it. If you find it and it's just this tiny little unexercised part of you, to find it first and then to grow it so it's not that tiny unused part of you anymore, so it becomes more and more a part of who you are right now on a daily basis. So that talk would be useful to check out. The third thing I want you to consider as you're doing this is that once you've discovered your power, once you've discovered what is unique about you, maybe it's not even all that unique. There are plenty of cases where people have taken IQ tests and come up with the same score. They still have the same intellectual makeup. Doesn't mean that there isn't diversity in it, but there is the distinction, the thing that sets you apart. In our society, we tend to think that you must be special in order to find success. The thing about being special is that in the diversity of mind, you may be special, but it's not required for you to be so special that you are absolutely unique. One of the things I focus on in doing this work, one of the things that I use to try and keep myself from getting arrogant and egotistical about it, is the idea that I am not unique. None of us are unique. Whether we have this unique ability or not, I've told you to find this special power of yours, that does not mean that you are unique, because as we grow empathetically, because empathy has been simmering in our species for about 2,000 years, we start to recognize that there are people with the same power as us. They just don't happen to be sometimes in our immediate vicinity. When you have an idea, you refuse or just basically don't act on it, but somebody else has that idea, it's easy to think that it was stolen from you or somebody utilized your work, when in fact it's that you really are not unique. Other people are having that same idea because it is that time in our history where that idea should become recognized. I may be doing this work, but there are other people doing this work the same way I am. They're understanding the same things, they're having the same revelations, because it's just that time in human mind for it to happen. That can be a little bit disheartening. I try to tell you that you are unique, but at the same time, you are not unique. What I want you to do is discover what it is about you that is powerful. And once you do that and you are doing this work, I want you to think of goals, to think of accomplishments or progress. As some examples, after my last talk, I was accused of being an overthinker. Well, for me, I've identified my tendency to overthink as one of my powers, part of my energy. I have made it my job. This is my side work. I have two forms of my side work. I have made it my job to utilize my capacity to overthink things and turn them into some way to be productive. It's basically the job I have assigned for myself is to overthink. All right, let's give you another example. My current day job, the current project I'm working on, is this great big pool. And to paint this pool, we needed scaffolding. Scaffolding is the sort of thing that can kind of tire you out. You're climbing all day, you're carrying up gallons and buckets of paint, and you're climbing ladders, and you're moving fast because there's a schedule and things. The scaffold's going to go away, and once it's gone, you don't have any access to the substrate anymore. So while I'm doing this, I'm fasting because I've just taken on some changes in my personal, in my health. I've taken more accountability for my health, and I'm doing this while I'm fasting. So understand that I am wearing myself out. I am expending energy. But at the same time, this is muscle energy. I will eat, I will sleep. Well, I'll eat less because I'm fasting. And I will go back the next day and do it again. But each time that I'm there, I know that come tomorrow, Monday, that scaffold is going away. I am trying to make progress, to make an accomplishment so that my work going forward tomorrow is easier, so that I have something to build from because I have done the work before. It's going to be like that when you're doing this work, when you are identifying where you are special, where you are powerful, when you are identifying things like insecurity and fear. It's going to be like this. Try to find places where you can identify progress. Because continually doing work and getting nothing out of it is the surest way to lead yourself to failure. We need to see incremental growth. It's great to see huge growth. I have personally felt exalted many times when I feel like there has been enormous growth. But don't limit yourself to only those instances of enormous growth. Find progress. Find progress you can achieve. Find progress you can celebrate. And continue working. Because it is true that you may discover what it is that is powerful about you, and this society will not care one way or the other. So all progress is only on you. Your friends or family may recognize it, in my case probably never, but it's important that you recognize it and just keep going. Also, we fail. I fail continually. I have taken on this job of defining human consciousness, of illustrating how that affects us, what it means for us. I've taken on this job of how to terraform our planet. I've taken on the job of fasting is a weird thing, but it's definitely a job. At first anyways. Maybe eventually it's just something you do. But at first it's definitely work. All of these things to try and improve my life and make myself more effective for the society I live in. All of these things are going to drain you. They're going to frustrate you. They're going to make it so that it seem like it was just easier when I didn't care about this stuff. It was just easier to go along and be driven by my memes, have the cares of the world are just inconsequential to me. I can just go on living my life and not have to worry about it. Without some kind of progress, it's so much easier to slip back into that. Remember that you are going to do this work in the environment you find yourself in. Maybe I'm not talking to you in the United States. Maybe I'm talking to you in Africa, and your entire society puts completely different limitations on you. This work has to be done with a diversity of mind, and that diversity of mind encompasses the entire planet. Not just my neighbors, not just people who speak my language, not just people who agree with me, everybody. Everybody's consciousness is built as an organic process, mimetically driven or fueled, leading to mind. That's how we are built. That's how we work. That is the second replicator we discovered on this planet. And remember, by and large, this environment is based in fear. We are largely based in ego. When I'm talking about mental work, when I'm talking about growing your consciousness and mind, one of the primary functions, whether it's limiting you or helping you expand, is ego. And ego, to thrive in an environment of fear, utilizes deserve. When you think, I deserve something, that is how your ego thrives in an environment of fear. When you say, that person deserves better, or that person deserves what they're getting, that is your ego thriving in an environment of fear. But no matter where I'm reaching you, no matter what environment you find yourself in, whether it is a fear-based environment or a support-based environment or whatever you happen to find, that is just the environment in which you have to do this work. It doesn't change your makeup. It doesn't change how your consciousness is structured. It changes how you have to grow going forward. The subject of vibes. For me, I view vibes as, first of all, if my vibe will match with yours, it will depend on whether or not you even understand what power you have. You even understand what capabilities, skills, and where you fit on this scale of diversity. If you don't even know that, you and I are not going to really vibe. If you do know that, and you utilize what power you have to feed your ego, to feed your deserve, to allow your ego just to thrive, you and I are not going to vibe, because I am somebody who has decided that no matter what I do, no matter what I think, no matter what concepts I come up with, I have to do so through the diversity of mind. It cannot be me as a singularity. It has to be us as a society, as a species. And if you use your power that you've discovered to enjoy the environment of fear, to elevate your power so that you feel more powerful because you are in control of this environment of fear, you and I are never going to vibe. There's just, I understand that diversity is important, but I see that as a trap. It's just, try to keep in mind that you are growing your mind. You are actively seeking to control how your mind grows organically going forward. And if you are somebody who thrives on that fear and that power, hopefully I'll find a way for you to get around it. I mean, you maybe enjoy it, maybe that's insulting, but that would be more my goal than to actually vibe with you. Which brings me to the first subject. I'm somebody who doesn't really want to talk about this subject, but for this discussion, it is an area where I have done a lot of the work, where I know what the work is. I know how to give you something to work on and something to work towards. And it is something that all of us have as a drive in our lives for our minds growing forward. And to one degree or another, some of us it's way more important, some of us it's way less important. As I get older, it's far less important. I'm glad I've got the work out of the way in general. But it's something universal to us. In choosing this example, I understand a couple of things going forward. One, I will never be able to say anything that hasn't been said to curb the hedonistic impulses in humanity. I cannot tell you anything that is going to control your desire, that is going to control how you act on your impulses. I can only try and give you an example that will inspire you to do that yourself. Also, I understand that I am speaking to my audience when I check. There's not a whole lot when it comes to analytics on YouTube. Like, I can't see who it is that's following or who it is that's viewing, but I can see that primarily I am talking to males. And I know in our society that there is a large portion, somewhere around a third of humans that are in their most, of males, that are in their most productive and prosperous time of life that have decided to just cut themselves off, to isolate themselves and not even pursue something like this. That there are actually men. See, when I was a kid, it was completely different. We didn't have the isolation capabilities that we have now. You, as a male, were definitely judged by your prowess, negatively and positively, depending on, it didn't matter. Like, if I was successful in my prowess, I was still judged negatively or positively. Didn't matter, but there was a lot more activity going on. And given the amount of activity and pursuit that was going on when I was younger, there was a lot less sex. Which has led to an environment where there is an enormous amount of sex, most of which is bad, non-productive to the growth of your mind or your growth with or even acquisition of a partner to grow with. And when I was very, very young, when puberty, I don't really want to discuss this topic, but I'm going to do it because it's a good example. When I was young, there were very few sources for, shall we say, self-pleasure. There were, I mean, As an example that comes to mind, the Victoria's Secrets catalog, or Playboys, or whatever you found at the top shelf way up at the gas station or store or whatever. Now, oh my God, now I can just scroll Instagram, find a girl who really turns me on and who is intentionally trying to turn me on. There is a huge market for attractive girls of all levels to find males who have given up or just in the moment at the moment and appeal to them sexually for the likes, the views, and the attention. Not only that, but I can sit on my phone, find an attractive girl who has the attitude I'm looking for, and then go find her OnlyFans account and get just about anything I want. This isn't luckily finding myself a magazine and finding a quiet place because there aren't any quiet places. It's a different level today than it was back then. The ability to isolate yourself and be selfish it's never been a better time for that. I understand why a third of males in that most productive area of their lives just give up, because it's never been easier to be selfish. No matter what I say to you, I cannot change those two environmental factors. I can't do it. So instead, I'm going to try and give you something to aspire to tell you something that is not fiction, to tell you something that is within your reach, something you can build towards. And I'm going to assume that you who are watching this have already done this work. Now, when we're talking about the growth of your mind, we are talking about, I've already covered the environmental factors, and now I want to talk about the ego. If I have found myself a partner, I prefer longer term monogamous partners, and just by the way, I am not looking anymore. I have my work, I have my purpose. This isn't an advertisement. This isn't a seeking for somebody to message me. It is entirely more convenient for me to do the work from that perspective, because I don't have an active drive giving me an impulse to search and find something. I don't have to do this to manipulate you or to brag or be arrogant. That is crucial to this work, to come from that perspective. So I want to talk about the sex, and I want to talk about the ego, and I want to talk about the growth of consciousness. This example is very productive because not only does it show you the growth of your power, not only does it identify your power and give you a chance to grow and learn and develop it, but it also gives you a chance to recognize that power in another person, to allow that person to experience their power, to show them how they can grow and give them a direction to grow in, something to achieve, something to bolster their confidence and move forward. Remember, deserve is how ego thrives in an environment of fear. If I feel I deserve all of this laziness that just keeps me isolated, that's because my ego is thriving in an environment of fear. So, ego and sex. I want you to keep in mind that I've done this work already. I did this work in the environment we're in, same environment I'm talking to you in probably. I understand that I may have had certain things that enabled me to be more successful at this. I don't try to think about it much, and I certainly try not to talk about it, but I am generally attractive, somewhere a little bit beyond the average. And I may have been lucky too. I met some incredible people as I was doing this work. I had incredible partners. I learned how to read and illustrate and try to show their power. And I always tried, and I recommend this. If you're going to do this work, I recommend that you do it from a place of trying to build your partner. Because, as you're going to find out in my example, ego is very dangerous when it comes to sex. Ego is the thing that will stop you at just satisfying your hedonistic urges, whether that be racking up a body count or, oh, I really did what I did to that one. Oh, yeah, she'll remember me forever. I changed her life. She never got to walk. That is all ego. And that is holding you back. Yes, sometimes in the bragging sense, it can give you incentives. It can give you progress and something to build on. But when it's just for your ego, it's a trap. It limits. I mean, you may feel like you have made this incredible progress, but since you're dumping all that progress into ego, it stunts you or has the capability of stunting you from making further progress. Try to do this work with honorable intentions. That has been my goal, and I'd recommend that as a goal in order to keep yourself grounded. That being said, what is it like in the act? If I am in the act and I have my partner in a position where she's already, I apologize for the crudeness, trying to do this delicately, and I'm probably turning red as I do it, but I'm making less eye contact. If I've got my partner in a position where she has already come 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, I know I've got my partner in a position where I can control and encourage or allow to build in order to continually allow my partner to come or make my partner to come. If I've got that potential, if I'm in that position right now, whether it's with you, whatever method you're using, that power, it's easy to mistake that power as your own. While it's true that you are in control and you have that understanding, you understand how you can push your partner, it is also true that your power, the power of your partner, is allowing you to do it. One of the things I learned while I was doing this work is that not everybody has the same levels of power. Some people can just continue to go and go and go and go. I'm trying not to make this crude or sound like it's boastful, but I know girls. I'm heterosexual male, so all of my experience is myself as a male with a woman. I have known women who can just come for an hour, 2 hours, and they just, for a minute, they will stop. And it will just be like, I can't go further. My body is aching. I can't catch my breath. And they're just sitting on you. And all you have to do is just move a little bit. Just the right way or just that little bit of movement, and they're off and going for another 3 or 4 orgasms. That is their power. Yes, it's powerful of me to be able to bring that out of them, but I can only bring it out of them in as much as they can continue on. If I'm looking at it as, this is me, I'm really rocking this girl, I am trapping myself and missing the opportunity to respect the power that I'm being shown. I have tried to tell partners, to illustrate to them and try and point out to them how powerful they are. And they, after the fact, they just look at you like, I don't understand. I cannot do for myself what it is you do for me. Because it is hard to illustrate for them that it is their power that allows me to express my power. And it's the same for them. Because males are capable of the same level of pleasure. I can do the same thing they are doing. If I can't discover that, if I have to use methodology other than actual intercourse, it's still good for your ego, it's still good for your pride, it's still good to grow, but it doesn't allow your partner the same possibilities. Most of the time, from what I found, that's fine. That's pretty much all they want, is the ability to express their own power. And I have no judgment for that. But if they're going to experience the same thing I am, I need to be capable of doing what they're doing. And males are. In fact, as you are trying to grow, you will find that the more you grow, the more limitations you are going to find in your partner, or the more amazed you will be by your partner. If you are somebody that has already understood and done the work. See, I've been laughed at by women who thought, when I tell them that there is actual hard work to being good at sex, and they will laugh because they don't have experience of that. What they have is experience of all the sex that goes with our society. Just the cheap nature of it, the disposable nature of partners, there's no building, so they don't understand that there is work. That's why I highly recommend this be a monogamous thing. It's not necessary. It's not necessary that being monogamous or heterosexual, but it is kind of necessary to have some kind of long-term ability to grow. Because if it's just a one night and I have done enough to feed my ego and satisfy your needs, that doesn't leave room for growth. It just leaves room for bragging. I mean, what's the point of that? It's nice, I suppose, but it's not conducive to growth. So I recommend monogamous, or at least long term. I prefer monogamous. And remember, I did this work in this environment, the same environment you're in probably. It is possible, and probably made easier if you find somebody with like-minded intentions. When you find that disparity in power, understand that you are probably not going to be successful at doing this work if you find a large disparity in power. If the person you are with is only in it for the quickies, or only cares for that level, that capacity of sexual expression, and you are somebody with a larger appetite or a larger sexual expression, it is harder to teach what I just discussed to somebody who has no interest in it whatsoever. And if you cannot teach it, you will find it even harder to experience it. If I can't teach it to my partner is never going to be able to give it to me. That's the baseline that I operate from. Now understand, I'm also operating from the baseline of not interested anymore. I've done this work. But that dynamic of power, ego, deserve, and fear. Think of the fear that is involved with this work. Because 95% of the world, it seems, is run by their insecurities and their fear. It's another reason the monogamous relationship helps out, I think, because you have a better chance of getting over that fear, those insecurities, and actually getting down and doing the work. Remember, this is my first example. The reason I chose to go with this example is twofold. One, it is reciprocal power. It is something that if my partner is capable of expressing more power, then I get to express more of my power. And it works reciprocally. You reciprocate this power. You both build on each other. It gives you an area to work on ego. It gives you an area to recognize deserve, fear, insecurity. This is a very powerful area that everybody has access to. And when it comes to faith, I want you to understand that what I have described for you is absolutely possible. That is what human beings are incapable of, and probably more. I have since stopped my research in this subject. But when I stopped with the impression that there was more to be discovered yet. I just have other work to do now. from a faith perspective, understand that if we are designed, this is how we are designed. The capacity for the expression of power sexually is such that I think the church in general has kind of missed God's perspective on sex, on the actual act of sex. Because there's been this heavy kind of stream of understanding that the old concept that sex is for procreation only. If you think about it from that perspective, you really miss the power, the bond, the ability to build each other up. And now, I've only been talking about the act. Understand that if I am in a position where I've got my partner, she has come 6, 7, whatever, however many times, and I know how to move, how to read, how to understand when it's just time to touch and massage skin, or hold, allow them to hold, just apply pressure and not motion, so that they can build for a much better orgasm. If I can do it to them, they can do it to me. Understand that you can both be in this state together. Now add on top of that focus, because that's what you have right now. You have focus on your partner. You are connected. There is a bond. That is your focus. Everything you are doing, you're not thinking about the dishes. You're not thinking about your bills. You are thinking about how you are reading your partner. You are thinking about how you are moving your body in order to enhance what is happening in your life right now. You are focused. Once it is comfortable and you introduce flow to this activity, if you and your partner are working on something very complicated, very hard to accomplish in life, and you can not only get to the focus, but then you can get to the flow and have these, understand that you are expressing several levels of power, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, the power that is found in a partnership. Once you have that focus, and then you add flow and duration, what objectives you are trying to accomplish together outside of this act becomes so much easier to work on because of this flow state. You can see flow states all the time in our society. Whether it's, most of the time, flow states are found in athletic activities, like whether it comes to boxing. I've seen fighters that get into these incredible flow states and you just can't touch them. Or I've seen runners get into these incredible flow states and they are just gone. I've seen construction workers get into these incredible flow states and they are just productive. I know that experience personally. I do that all the time. There is almost nothing I can think of that is more powerful for you to grow than to achieve these flow states with a partner, especially if you are working on common goals. All right, so that's that subject. I've gotten past it. Yay, okay. Now I want to talk about my second subject, and that is to cry. Now again, I understand that from the analytics of my channel, primarily I am speaking to males. I want you to first off understand that men have emotions. Real men, all men, have emotions. Real men understand that and do not run from them. We just try to understand and find a way to be productive while we have them. I should start with, I have had a long-standing rule. I'm telling you that I have embraced my ability to cry. But I have a rule. If there are tears, and those tears are for myself, that is not allowed. That is, the best way to say it is, that is deserve. If I am crying for myself, I have identified something that I desire, something I feel I deserve, something that is lacking from my life, and that causes me to despair. Whether that is I think I deserve to be able to help somebody, or I think I deserve that car, or I think I deserve his job, or whatever. If you are shedding tears, think of crying. Crying isn't always just the leaking of fluids from our eyes. Oftentimes, especially if you allow it to take you over, it is your whole body flexing. It is your whole body expressing and purging, trying to deal with these emotions. And sometimes it feels like you are just letting them go out of your body because they've just overpowered you. If the source of those tears is something about myself, it's not allowed for me and hasn't been allowed for decades. It's not something I will put up with. I understand that maybe that would be from a perspective, it may be unhealthy. But maybe I'm talking to somebody who is just caught right in that. The only time you cry is because of your desperation. Understand that when we cry, there are frequencies that we can choose from to express that power. When I say frequencies, I mean you can cry in frustration. You can cry in despair, as I've just talked about, my rule against it. You can cry out of sympathy. You can cry out of joy, inspiration, connection. Crying can lead you to resolve. Crying can be done out of fear. I think primarily of those who are in childhood or never really get out of childhood, that just cry because of fear. These are frequencies. I know that they're not frequencies of the tears themselves, but artistically, I guess my expression would be the frequency of your tears. You can choose that frequency. If you find yourself in a position where you are crying out of desperation, there's no hope, there are things you feel like you must be doing or should be doing or deserve to be doing, you don't have to express that power in that frequency. If you find yourself, the way out of that trap is to identify it. You have to recognize that that is what is happening and that you have a choice. Without that recognition, you are being driven. This isn't you growing. This is you expressing things because things have bottled up and come to such an extreme example where you have to shed that power because you are not using it. You are being driven to build up that power and to just shed it in despair. You are not using your power. If you find yourself in that position, all I want you to do is the basics. Recognize that it is a frequency you are choosing. Once you recognize that, even if you're just in the beginning of it, where you have the capacity to recognize that, I don't want you to start out with the ability to change it, but I want you to go forward looking for examples that can allow you to change it. If you cry in fear and desperation, and you recognize the fear, the desperation, why you are doing what you are doing, but you have nothing else, no other examples of frequencies for you to change it to, from this point forward, your work is to find those examples and frequencies that you can change to try and eliminate your use of this energy in just that despair, that driven way. I want you to find examples that allow you to be fueled so that you are growing your consciousness, your mind intentionally with your own purpose in mind. I have found, and I'll use this example. I'm somebody who suffers from migraines. I've suffered from migraines my whole life, as far back as I can remember. And one of the best solutions I have found for getting rid of a migraine is an inspirational cry. I've told you that my methodology for this work is primarily based in our stories. I find this is the best time in human history for human storytelling. It is beyond compare. We have never had a time in this iteration of consciousness, we have never had a time where it was better. Maybe it was as good when we had small units of people sitting around a fire with the stars over our head to inspire us. Maybe there was a time where stories were the cornerstone of our civilizations. And maybe I am wrong that this is the best time, but my goodness, the stories we tell and our mediums for sharing those stories, it's never been better. I've found that if it's been 2 days and I've had this migraine and I just can't get rid of it, it's just impairing everything else I do, a really good inspirational cry seems to relieve that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not your healer. I can't recommend it as medicine, but it is certainly something that has definitely worked for me. All right, I'm getting towards an hour here, so I'm going to try and wrap this up. I want to get back to why I am doing this. I tell you, I'm doing this because I have work to do. But also, I tell you that my participation in the work is largely irrelevant. And let me explain that to you. I am someone who believes in God. I believe that there is a power higher than our own that is intentionally trying to influence the direction that mind grows on this planet. And that not only this planet, that I think there are countless planets out there that are also Dawkinsian good moves for the growth of mind. I think that the power that is greater than ourselves, that created this mental replicator of memetics, is interested in the growth of collective mind. That if reincarnation is real, then after I leave this life, I will have this litany of things that I could do next, whether it be become an alien species or a freaking squirrel. I say squirrel because I've got like a dozen squirrels running around out here in my yard. But it's irrelevant what I choose, what I illustrate as a choice. That whatever choice comes next, if reincarnation is true, will also be towards the collective growth of mind. When I am in meditation, when I am connected with God, when I am exploring the universe and growing my consciousness, I understand the importance of the contribution I am making. If I see a way to terraform this planet, just my adding it to the collective growth of mind is enough. I can say aloud the discovery I make, and since I am not unique, other people are making that same discovery. I am only adding my unique contribution to the growth of collective mind, which is God, which to my understanding seems to be the reason why we are here. That collective growth of mind is the point of mind. How much am I contributing to that collective growth? How much will I continue going forward to contribute going forward? That is not enough for me to make my contributions. It is enough for me to live my life, for me to grow, for me to learn, for me to not be stuck in all of these traps, for me to live my life more joyfully and more purposefully. But that, in and of itself, is not enough for me. Because I agree with people like Dr. Jordan Peterson who say, if you have something to say, if you have something to contribute, no matter how much you're going to be ridiculed, no matter how much you're going to be hated, no matter how much all of these things that you worry about and you're insecure about are going to happen, saying it is the right thing to do. Because I am probably wrong, but I will say something that some other mind out there, somebody watching this, it'll stick and it'll be repeated and it will grow. That is the point. And I don't think that's only happening here. I think it's a universal thing. So my work must be to inspire that in you. Whether I am wrong or not doesn't matter, because that is just a matter of scale. What I utilize in my meditation is size defeats us. On every front that I meditate on, every topic, every discussion, every problem, at the end of the problems I am working on, I am being defeated by size. If I want to move forward with that problem, I need to find the area in which size is defeating me. Literally, the growth of mind. For my work, it is important that I illustrate to you how to do that for yourself. Not only because I have a plan to terraform this damn planet, and to do that, I need minds that are actively growing, but because it is the best way for anybody who watches this talk to actually experience that growth for themselves. I cannot just explain to you how it works. I can understand it and explain it, but that's not enough. I need for you to understand it. I need for you to grow from it. I cannot understand it for you. I can only explain it. And we will disagree, especially on specific topics when it comes to dogmatic faith. But that's just the environment in which I have to do my work. And if you are doing the same work, it is just the environment in which you have to do that work. We as individuals are not as important as we'd like to think we are. That collective contribution to the growth of mind is what matters, as far as I'm aware, as far as my meditations have taken me. And at the end of the day, I hope I have done something like that for you. Thank you for your time. It's been over an hour. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful.